Welcome back to Why Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and it feels like I was just here yesterday. But we have to move on for now from the horrible Big Brother production decision and back into an actual eviction vote. The one that was still impacted by repercussions from what happened then. Joining me is my co host, Ovi Kabir.
Hey, David, happy to be here. Sad to be here after who has been evicted these last and who has been chosen to be taken out of the house by
Yes.
production. Tough weeks we've had as Big Brother fans, and it's a tough week to be back here. But I'm happy to be able to talk with anybody, nobody else in the world I would want to than you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, you unfortunately couldn't join us on the Why Rachel Lost podcast because of scheduling. As I said on that podcast, CBS didn't tell us what was happening, so you couldn't alter your plans to
They did not.
there. But for anyone who hasn't had a chance to listen yet, we of course talked about more than just why Rachel lost. It was her whole game that we covered. But wanted to check with you. Did you have anything you wanted to add about it all?
I mean, there's so much I feel like everyone has already said about this issue, but what I will just say, it is such a shame to see. You and I have been going back and forth about this season where I said, I'm really loving this season so much because it is when you have a lot of players who are dumb at the game. It's fun to watch the fireworks happen. And you have somebody like Rachel who's really running their way through the house. Like, I'm enjoying it. And you're like, well, I want more strategy. Understandable. And so Big Brother did the one thing that you know that you would love is take out all the strategy out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And they truly changed up this whole season, which I'm very sad because it's getting to this end game, which is usually can be a really fun strategic portion. It does feel like more of a survival game at this point.
Yeah.
It's one of those things you just hate to see it. Hate to see a legend go out, and you want them to, have their own swan song. You want them to be voted out, and so I was very sad to see that. So, still having hopes that we have some fun fireworks and maybe some strategy at the end game. But at this point, I'm quite sad, like many other viewers have been too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, today is not about fun fireworks. It's literally in 1 week we have said goodbye to the two most popular house guests. And so in honor of Will, I was trying to match his two jobs. I've got my podcaster shirt on, and I had a camo hat on, except the camo was so good that it disappeared into the green screen type of situation we've got going here. So, I didn't want to do a podcast with half a head. Um, but the camo works. We know the camo works. So,
This
you
work.
know, but yeah, as I mentioned, Rachel being eliminated that way is part of what leads to us discussing Will. Just these things, it's like dominoes falling. But that was on a game level, what happened to Will. And he went out through all the usual processes. Therefore, so will we, as we follow our usual path of comparing how he played to a set of guiding rules I originally wrote back in 2004 and have modified ever since. We'll analyze his actions from what we saw on TV, live feeds, interviews, and other information. And of course, the most recent published version of the rules, if you'd like to look at them, is at robhasawebsite.com/bigbrotherrules. Now, we usually have some other things to discuss about the week in general. And the Rachel situation was so overwhelming that it overshadowed so much, including even the live feeds. But there are a couple things I want to mention. First is Lauren's HOH. She wanted to have an impactful week and evict either Keanu or Morgan. But once again, she was so scared of actually playing that she threw the veto, which allowed Morgan to win it, meaning Keanu was playing a very physical blockbuster against two not very physical people. And we ended up with Will going, of course. Wah, wah. Once again, a failed HOH by her because she's just so scared of everything.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you see this player like Lauren in the beginning. I really loved what she was doing. And we've talked about it, week in and week out that she's making sometimes the right moves, even though I want to take a little bit more action, but she's playing in the background, working her way through the game, and she's surviving. And I had a feeling that maybe she'll take she's going to be the snake in the game where she takes the strike when she needs to. And this was one of the weeks to really build up. I always hate when people say, like, build up the resume, make sure you have
Mhm.
talk about when you're at the end game. But this really was her chance to do that. In a time where I feel like the game was truly like whoever she takes a shot at, no one would be super mad at her because they know it's the end of the game. We had a huge breakup with Rachel going out. It really was the week for her to do something a little bigger than what she did.
Yeah, and she talks a big game. I on the live feeds, she would, talk to Vince about, oh, they say I'm indecisive. Oh, well, I'll just tell them next time I win HOH. You want to see decisive? You're on the block there. And I said, yeah, I'll believe it when I see it. I made a video about that. And of course, we did not see that because instead what we saw was, I don't want to actually. Wow, that sounds like Vince. That's too whiny. With Lauren, I don't have like Tara, and I don't have all of the voices down pat here.
Still working on it.
Yeah, but with Lauren, it's just like, oh, I it would be scary to have to do the veto and nominate someone, and so therefore I'll throw the veto, and it was just such bad play. You're getting Will out. You wanted Keanu or Morgan, and you got Will.
Yeah, I mean, it's somebody who's really not against you per se. I mean,
Hmm.
you're not on the radar that they need to get them out. Like Will isn't that person for you. And it's one of those things where that I just want her to take that action and go for it, and not play. Because I feel like Rachel was saying this beforehand, like don't play Vince's game and don't fall under his
Hmm.
spell of things like that. And she has rebuked that, but we're seeing, unfortunately, the move she's making benefits his game most of the time rather than hers.
And sometimes it doesn't benefit either of them. Yeah.
Sometimes she'll take a curveball
Yeah.
and throw it.
Yeah. But moving on to one of her targets, we saw that Keanu has returned to his delusional ways again. He has been a frequent person showing up in this portion of the podcast because of his grand delusions.
Your winner pick?
Yes, my winner pick,
Your
the
winner pick.
delusionary. Uh, he could not understand why Vince wouldn't volunteer to go up as the replacement nomination when Keanu was certain Vince would be perfectly safe. And then that would keep himself safe as well. He wanted Vince to be a team player. Are you new? Vince plays for one person and one person only, himself, as he should. This is not a team game, especially at this point. And volunteering for the block is and always has been and always will be stupid. Vince is not going to do that. And yet Keanu doesn't understand any of this.
Keanu is just trying to enforce his will, and
Mhm.
he is making his reality everyone else's reality because he cannot lose. So why not throw a little delusion? What's going to happen? They're going to put him on the block. He's going to win himself out. That's his mindset. I mean, I blame you, David, to be completely honest. It is you instilled this year. You had this power to not choose a winner pick for yourself, but choose a winner for this game. And I feel like you instilled that
Ah,
into Keanu. Like whatever you said beforehand, whatever sacrifice you did to get you really wanted a winner pick this year. And somehow you have manifested it in Keanu.
oh no.
So it's David to blame. If you guys are
Okay.
upset, just
Okay.
put that in there. Let it have it be known.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is, you talk about his delusions as what's the difference? He can't get any worse. And that part is true, but he just causes himself so much grief
Mhm.
by not understanding the world that he lives in. Like he kept going further when he actually asked Lauren, "How come you're willing to sacrifice me but not Vinny?" And I was just like, "My God, you're dense." Everyone else in this house realizes how close those two are. She used the veto on him against Rachel's wishes. But somehow Keanu believed he earned her trust more than Vince has because he lives in Keanu world.
It when a player doesn't have repercussions in the game, and he does have repercussions in the game, but he bounces back so
Right.
often, they become cemented in their own beliefs. And I think he believes the juice that he's trying to pour for
Yeah.
everybody. I can truly believe that, and I mean, I think that's what you mentioned, a delusion, right? Of him, that he says certain things are just completely out of line of how the game is going, but week in and week out, we see somehow that regardless of if it's delusion or not, he's going forward in it. And that's basically the structure of the game at this point, win the
Yeah.
competitions and
Which
move
is
forward. And I just don't think we're going to see it stop because, you're not going to get smacked by your own delusions with this type of structure.
right. And I mean, that's exactly it. That's one reason the structure is so absolutely horrible is it allows people like Keanu and Kelly, the delusional people, to just keep going no matter what. But yeah, nothing we can do about it except keep bringing it up every time he has more
We bring it
delusion.
up. There's a chance we might be bringing it up in the Why Blank One
Yeah. Oof.
episode. I mean, that
Oof.
one will be.
Yeah.
You might see David take a break after that.
Yeah.
He might, he might need some time to recuperate.
I mean, Cody winning All Stars broke me. Sent me to the hospital for a week and a half. So
Do
I hope.
not compare. These are incomparable games. Even then, that's wild. You would even compare 22 to this. This one's a different world. If that broke you, this one for sure will.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we'll see. We'll see. We have some weeks to go. We have some
Yeah.
weeks, but it wasn't Keanu's week to lose. It was
No.
Will's.
No.
Unfortunately, who would have been
Yeah.
great to see one. We both were
Yes.
fingers crossing.
Yes. Do you have anyone or anything else you want to discuss before we move on?
No, I mean, I feel like this is such a week where you mentioned, the Rachel
Yeah.
took up a lot of our mindset, and then we've talked about Keanu. I mean, we can talk about to death. I think we've talked about the last few episodes, our little whatever mans, our cheat mans going
Oh,
on that has
yes.
manifested. But I think we'll leave that be because I think that will manifest itself into this future episodes still because they're both here. So with that in mind, I am good to move on.
Yes. All right. Well, normally we would now have our semi-regular segment. Julie Chen Moonves is wrong about blank, but I don't have anything here specifically unless we wanted to spend time talking about her idiotic attempt to cover production's butt during her interview with Rachel by trying to throw the blame back on Rachel herself. But I feel like that was covered on the recap episode and has been, we it was exactly what I expected. I even posted on Blue Sky beforehand, like, whatever happens in this interview, no, Rachel is not going to slam them because she's a professional and she knows it's being edited by production. And of course, we had Julie being production's mouthpiece. So, of course, this was what they were going to do, just like they had the voiceovers that they added in the actual Rachel elimination episode to make it sound like there was a social game. They're trying to cover their butts. So I really don't have anything more to say about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, very interesting episodes. The way the eulogy, the way they kind of put it
Mhm.
together of the background, it's funny because you can tell they need to change things up because it was unlike any other episode they would
Mhm.
post. Like, the whole structure of it was so different, regardless of the element that was thrown in there. Yeah, so I'm sure we'll have more segments down the line of
Yes.
this
Oh,
portion.
yeah. All right. Well, before we get to the rules, I do want to mention that Survivor 49 is starting in a couple weeks. So you can prepare for that by getting a copy of the Survivor version of the rules on a poster. And you can go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed, scroll down to it and click on it and then order it. In addition, we also have other ways to get those rules, including a poster on a t-shirt and the checklist on a t-shirt. And so, again, these are all the Survivor versions. Sorry. But again, you can go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed for all of that. Well, Will was probably the most likable person in Big Brother 27. When he left, he said that was the reason behind him being voted out. But was it really that simple? Does that cover all of it? Or were there complicating factors that led to Will heading off to be the second juror? At RHAP, We know Big Brother, and we know why Will lost. Now, the first and most important rule is to scheme and plot. As much as Will was a fun and lovable guy, he was no Dr. Will when it came to the game. Captain Will was a much different player. Way back in week 3, he said to himself slash us, I don't know if I'm built for this bleep. All this lying, making up bleep, it's too much lying. Later in the game, Will told Ashley it would be hell if he won veto in that particular week because he would have to talk to so many people over 2 days. Man, I tell you, Ovi, life is rough. Hey, Will, welcome to Big Brother.
And, it's funny because in the beginning, my expectation for Will were slightly lower because I was worried about one, how he would adjust into the game, being an older house guest comparatively to his peers. And it felt like this year the house guest seemed a little younger, or the conversation seemed a little bit younger. And we saw that with Will, where he was like, I feel, a little bit out. How do I connect with people? I feel like there's nothing I can talk to them with. And I was like, okay, like it's manifesting itself. We're seeing that. We're kind of seeing, okay, Will might be a pawn. But then, with this, yes, he was no Dr. Will, but I like how he kind of took his strategy of, I am worried about scheming against other people, backstabbing him. I'm going to find a strategy that works with it. And, he really played a fly on the wall where he was part of discussions, but also, that was the thing with Will. He didn't input. He was just a bouncing board for people. And it worked well for him. I don't think it would have worked well for any other player wanting to do this, but he was the one player who could be like, I don't want to scheme and plot and cut people, backstab. I would decide my own scheming and plotting. And that'll be with me in the DR room, because that was the only person he was really trying to talk about his strategies with.
Yeah, I mean, he went through like a cycle of playing the game. Unfortunately, he ended where he began because it took him a while to get the swing of things. Along the way, he was in some alliances, like the Bond Alliance, for whatever that was worth, and a couple of others. He was in the Judges Alliance, which he and Ashley basically like brought together, and that alliance was carrying the day until the stupid rule change that eliminated things like alliances from actually mattering. Like, it doesn't matter what your alliance is, especially when his tight ally Ava screwed it all up on top of that.
Yeah, I mean, his game was very dependent on the people around him. So, like you mentioned, it went on and off, but it really had to switch in different ways, because if his allies were playing badly, his game was kind of a little bit in issue, because he was really relying on other people to make the moves, which again typically isn't a strategy, because we always talk about within the game, when you're scheming and plotting, you need to have some form of autonomy, especially to get to the end of the game, because you don't want to base it off anybody else's game. You're going to lose at the end. He was in a unique situation where we see a lot of people, we see a lot of like older house guests come in there, and we see a lot of older house guests who are women who talk about they want to play a motherly figure, a motherly role. Or we see that in a lot of other social games in Survivor. I'll play the mother role and try to have my baby cubs around me, and it works out with them. We don't really see as much with the men going in there, because I want to be the father figure of here, but we kind of saw that role with Will.
Yeah.
But like you said, when his kids are doing bad things, like Ava throwing around the alliances or changing up the game, it hurts his game because it's a reflection of him. But overall, I still kind of liked how he was able to, work his way with that.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't exactly a big strategist, and he didn't try to be one, like you said. In fact, when he was first nominated, he didn't try pretty much anything at all. He was nominated, as we know, a couple times early as a pawn, but his own inaction was a big contributing factor to the second one. Lauren, who was HOH, did a terrible job of talking to him throughout the whole game. But the problem for him is that she was the HOH twice, which means he was the one who needed to be seeking her out and talking to her. And he did not do that. The first time that she was HOH, which was his second nomination, he heard through the grapevine that he was an option to go on the block. And therefore, he went to bed without talking to Lauren. Like, what are you doing? And then the next morning, he still didn't go to her. She came to him. And even then, he didn't really push back. Like, he said, well, yeah, I heard you were planning to do that. He could have reminded
Mhm.
her, like, we're in the Bond Alliance together. Remember that? Uh, you know, so she went back and told Vince that one reason she nominated Will was because he had just accepted it when she talked to him about it as a possibility. And then, unfortunately, I think that was still his attitude this time as well. Or I don't want to say still, again, because I said it was a cycle. He told Mike Bloom, I couldn't have changed their mind, and I really didn't try. I knew they were dead set. And what I'm not going to do is beg somebody for a damn vote. I'm not that person. I can't do it. I won't allow myself to do it. Within 2 days, I went from being definitely safe to definitely leaving. It happened in 48 hours. So it is what it is. And here's the problem. Let me sum it up this way. He's wrong. Vince was anything but, quote, dead set. He was actually looking for an excuse to change his vote, and he couldn't find one. That's partially because, like the first time Will was nominated, he didn't give him one. He didn't even try. Plus, think about it. If it flipped on you in 48 hours, it can flip back. But if you're not willing to fight for yourself, whether you call it begging instead of fighting, then you really aren't playing Big Brother. I'm
Mhm.
just not sure what he expected. And this wasn't a recent development because he was saying it to Amy all the way back when they were nominated together on week 2. So, yes, I'm sorry. You do have to fight or beg or whatever for votes. It is part of the game.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the strategy of when you rely on others to do things for you. It can only go so far, especially in this
Mhm.
end game. And I think the biggest issue was he was content. He was content with how he was, where he was in the game, and he was okay with potentially going out at that point. Like, I think he set out to do what he wanted to do, and that changes while you're in the game. If you think you're going to go out week 1 and you have life after that, then it's like, okay, you're playing on house money. It doesn't matter if you go out down the line. It's like you're there, you're there. And I feel like he had that mindset, unfortunately, where when the switch flips up, he's not going to be the one flipping it back and down. The lights
No.
are off. All right, well, I'm sleeping now. The lights are on. Okay, I'm going to stay up. It's not him flipping the switch. So it was tough to see because we see a player with such, and I don't want to bleed into other, but such good social game and connections with people.
Mhm.
If he did take a little bit more autonomy near this end of this game and want to make those decisions, actually play the game, I think we could have seen something very cool in the way Will could have strategized. But his, I don't want to say inability to strategize but his
Unwillingness? Yeah.
unwillingness to do it is what really harmed him in this portion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is interesting because going back to that earlier nomination, after Will took it sitting down, he then got upset. It wasn't about him letting his emotions get away from him, or else we'd be talking about it in Rule 4. This was him purposely letting it be known he was not a happy pawn like some of the others. He wasn't going to just go quietly into that good night. As he told Mickey at the time, he had to let those MFers know he's mad. And in large part because he did stand up and make a stink about it, he was not made into a pawn star, which is good. But the problem was he did it too late for that particular vote, that nomination when he was nominated the second time. And he was almost evicted that week. If Vince and Zach hadn't flipped, thanks in part to Ava talking to them, and also in part due to not being on the wanting to be on the same side as Keanu, he'd have been gone.
Do you feel that the expedited result of Rachel kind of took the air out of his sales? Do you feel like in their mind, oh, I'm gonna play the game when Rachel, he's gonna add it up.
Mhm.
But since Rachel was just kind of taken out, like, do you feel like that did such a damper to him in
Well,
this
that would
portion?
be an emotional reaction. So we'll wait till Rule
Mm.
4 to
Love that. We will.
So I might have thoughts about that, is
You have
what I'm
thoughts. Okay,
saying.
good. Put a pin. Let's put a pin in that portion
Yeah.
then. I will ask that question again.
Now, Ava was, of course, one of Will's closest allies, and she helped him in that early case that I mentioned. But you need something more in an ally, and Ava really wasn't it. Chantel and I discussed yesterday how Ava messed up the hamster wheel of death that helped lead to her tightest ally, Will, being evicted. Like, when she was walking around crying on the, in the eviction episode Thursday night, I was like, oh, Ava, just be quiet. You're the one who caused this. You started the ball rolling that caused all this. So just stop it. But, she, on top of that, she didn't really talk much game. Mickey mentioned this to Will a little while back, and Will said she doesn't. I think she's playing the wrong game. She's really nonchalant, but she's very trustworthy. And it's good that he had a trustworthy ally, but he needed allies who would fight for him. But for most of the game, she's just shrugged and said, it's all predetermined. Whatever will happen, will happen. C'est la vie, or sieste la vie. That was even her attitude when people let her know they'd be voting out Will this time. She was like, well, I don't like it, but, whatever happens. That's not who you need in an ally. You need someone who's going to fight for you.
And that's the issue, because his game was so similar in that way of hers. It's just like you kind of, even though he did have more input, I will say, in a lot of the conversations, it was, you see, when you don't have an ally, say, that who pushes for you, but that's kind of what their alliance was built on. Was it okay? Well, it's not us, it's okay if it's not us, and then try to stay away from it. So it's the hand that bites you, right? It worked so well for him throughout the game, because both of them were like, okay, well, we can vote together. It's not us, it's somebody else. But then it comes back because now Ava's in that position. Meh. So
Yeah.
and you see her emotion when he gets voted out, and
Right.
you're like, wow, but you also, you could have done something about this.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you could have helped.
You could have helped in multiple ways. Yes. I feel like a lot of time Will played the game like the podcaster he is. He sat back, he watched, and then he commentated on the side with people. Like when Mickey went crazy after going after Rachel, he talked to Ashley and Ava about how people spent half the week antagonizing Rachel, and then they were freaking out when they could have just focused. Or talking about Vince and Morgan and how their hugging was getting even more obvious. He didn't want to get involved, and sometimes he didn't even listen to people. But he could give good advice when asked. Like Ava told him Keanu was pushing her to say she would vote out Ashley instead of Vince when it came down to that a couple weeks ago. And Will told her, just tell him whatever he wants to hear. On Thursday, just vote however you want to vote. What's he going to do? He's not HOH no more. So it's like the concept of lying hadn't even occurred to Ava until Will said it.
He has a very good read on how dynamics work. I think that goes from his interpersonal skills, but also in the house. It's kind of, he is the inverse of Keanu in that regard, where he sees how the narrative is working in the house, how players are playing it, and he's watching. And like you said, it's kind of the podcaster in him, where he sits back and he's watching, and it doesn't hurt that basically anybody that he has already talked to in some relationship will basically give him more information than he ever gives them. He is the true sounding board. So he's able to kind of see that. So when it asks for it, like, you'll get it. It's kind of like in a video game when you go to the character, and you just like have conversations with them. You're asking an NPC. You're like, hey, what do I do for this side quest? And they're the all-knowing, the wizard telling you, oh, this is your mission. This is your mission. That's how I looked at Will. That he would just be like, all right, here's what you can do. But it's only when prompted. You have to go to them to do it. They're not going to do it themselves. That's not the role. And he took on that role. I wish he took on a more of an active role, because I don't think we would be having this episode about him if he did.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. Because he was sitting back and wasn't interested in, as he called it, begging for votes, he completely opened the door for Ashley to do it against him. I mean, we heard Ashley say on the show that
Hmm.
He told her it was okay to campaign against him in order to stay, and she did. Those votes did not flip magically in 48 hours. She flipped them. She put in the work. She got it done. She got Morgan and Keanu on her side, and then Morgan worked on Vince, and even Lauren came around. So if Vince has both his independent allies happy, he's going to do it. He doesn't want to piss off both of them. It's rare that he could do something that makes both of them happy.
Yeah, no, I mean, and we'll probably get into it more, but this week really was, it shows who wants it more, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're getting to this end of the game, it's the small things that matter. It's the small like conversations you have that can really make the needle keep moving back and forth. And when you have a player like Will who's not advocating for himself, and you have a player like Ashley who is really advocating for herself, and then you have the other added elements which we'll go into from threat level, social games, all these other components, it makes a very compelling argument. All right, we should not keep Will here, but Will could have changed that. I mean, he played for, he gave everyone else advice, and I wish he just kind of sometimes took it, himself, where he could have acted upon this.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think we can move into the second rule here, which says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. When it comes to that second part of this rule, Vince was pretty much perfect. He was, usually a vault. People would tell him all sorts of things, and he did not spread it around. We talked about that already a bit in the first rule. Now, he did have a slip by telling Rachel that Keanu had told Ava that she was pushing to get Ava out, but he also didn't expect Rachel to go running to Ava about it. Other than that, many secrets just died when they went into his ears, or rather, if they went into his ears at all, because he really might not have been listening.
No, I think one of my favorite clips we've gotten from the episodes was one of them where he's like, people just tell me things, and I'm there, and I'm just listening to them. They don't even realize I'm not the one even talking to them. And it shows clips of him in so different
Yeah.
scenarios, and he's just like a soundboard. He's like, yep. And he was able to keep all the information he wanted to himself because he didn't talk game of his game. He didn't talk about, okay, this is what my strategy will be. He really was very perfect at listening to people and kind of giving them what they want to hear. And by that, kind of being a trusted ally. It was really impressive seeing him work in this regard where he was able to get as much information as he needed. But the issue is that you gotta work with that information that once you receive it.
Yeah, it's like a spy agency that then doesn't pass it along. It's like, hey, we found out that they're launching an attack over here. Okay, that's good to know. Are we going to do anything about it? You told me. That's good enough. Like
Yeah.
what good is that? Um, Now, as to the rest of the rule, considering that we talked about how he didn't really want to scheme and plot much to begin with, it's safe to say he certainly didn't do it too much.
No, we wish he did a little bit more.
Yes, exactly. All right, so we can go to the third rule, which talks about the need to be flexible. Ovi, I know the question you always like to ask is whether the player was tested. So, do you think Will was tested? And if so, did he pass or fail?
In this one, unfortunately, I think Will was tested many times. Whether Will really realized he was tested, I'm unsure. I don't think he cared. There were so many scenarios where Will really could have saved his game and just let it be to other people. I mean, it was he knew what was happening, how things were kind of flipping on him, especially this week too. You kind of see the writing on the wall in different ways when he allows other people to campaign against him, and he decides he's not going to. I mean, he really stuck to his principles and how he wanted to play the game. I felt like in the beginning I was impressed with him in this regard because he's on the block. He's not having the ability to connect to players the way he feels like needs to be. And we're kind of seeing the game get away from him. But then we see him find himself in alliance after
Mm-hmm.
alliance after alliance and people talking about Will really in no negative way at all. And I'm like, this is very impressive the way you've been able to maneuver the game without realizing. I think it wasn't really flexibility that was getting him through the game. It was more so just who Will is, a really good guy, a really good person. And that was got him so far in the game, which is actually really impressive alone as a person. Kudos to Will, but BB player not flexible at all.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. He was easygoing, but not flexible in a game sense. We talked earlier about him not wanting to have to beg for votes from a bunch of 20 somethings. Well, guess what? That's the situation you're in. That's also the situation you should have known you would be in. But even if you didn't know, you have to shift your perspective. Rudy Bosch was older than Will when he played. I mean, he was a solid 20 years older than Will when he played in the very first season of Survivor. And he famously said, I got to fit in, not them. There's more of them than there is of me. If Rudy understood this way back then, Will should have known it now.
100%. And I don't know if it's one thing he's just saying that to cope on certain things, but it's frustrating because you know what you're signing up for. Everyone knows that no matter what, when you sign up for Big Brother, you're going to get a 20-something-year-olds living.
I mean,
in
I'm not
house.
going to say everyone knows. I mean, some of these people still don't know what the live feeds are.
That is true.
But yes, I think Will should have known.
Yes, most people going into it should, and it's one of those things. Is you view each person in the house. They are a vote for you, a player, another person that you need. It doesn't matter their age. Doesn't matter. Everyone has the same vote, especially at this stage of the game, and everyone kind of has the same level of power to kind of keep you in the game. So. Yeah, I don't love that take from him. And I'm hoping it's more so like, I say after the fact coping.
Yeah. Well, another way that Will was not really flexible was the way he thought about flexibility. He told Mike Bloom, when I think of a team, if I think of an alliance, you rock with that alliance all the way through, and then you pick each other off. Some people have a different concept of an alliance in this game, and that's their prerogative. And Morgan and Vinny are two of those people because they are dead set on just the final two. Now, he acknowledged that's their prerogative, but he didn't do anything about counteracting it. Again, in this case, he was still blaming Morgan and Vince for his exit, which was way oversimplifying things. But the point is, he seemed to think his view of what an alliance was should carry the day. But like everything else, you have to consider what that other people aren't going to look at it the same way as you. Like he even said, that's their prerogative. Okay. So then I have to wonder, was he actually going to follow it? Like, would he have voted out Ava before Vince or Morgan because Vince and Morgan were in the Judges Alliance with him? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a hard tell, but I also feel like maybe because I think this might have been the strategy that he would have talked about at the end of the game, end of the jury, where he's like, I played my principal game, I was who I was, and I was in this alliance and I had to pick people out of it. I mean, maybe it would have helped that Ava was kind of lackadaisical about him and pushing, like trying to keep him there. Maybe he wouldn't feel as bad about that going down the game. But yeah, it's. I truly think Will was going to live and die by the same sword he came in and came out with.
All right. Well, the fourth rule says players should not let their emotions control them, and I think this is where we have a significant issue at the end of the game because Will just gave up. And I think a lot of it was emotional exhaustion. And I want to say, look, it's hard to blame the guy. He's playing against younger and in most cases more athletic people. The game itself has become more athletic in recent days. He has an injured knee because of how athletic one of those comps was. Production is keeping the blockbuster for a ridiculously long time so there would be more of those comps. He lost Rachel to a physical comp. Plus, from conversations we've seen on live feeds, he, among others, believes the Mastermind's month of mayhem will include more eliminations instead of evictions. They don't know, but they're presuming that there's going to be more like that. Many of the players have talked about how having a good social game doesn't matter when you're in a situation such that only comp wins help you. One thing just kept piling on top of another, and they broke his spirit. So, yeah, I get it. But it doesn't mean we can let him off the hook here.
Yeah, he up to this week, these last week and a half, he played a very principled game where he sticks to his rules, and I don't feel like he's made emotional decisions truly that have impacted his gameplay too much. I mean, if we want to say he's been by his principles, I, maybe we could say that, but he has stuck to his guns, how he's going to play it, lay low, essentially, not stir the pot. It was this last week and a half. I agree with you that the game broke him in the sense that do you feel the hope is still there? Do you feel like you can win? And
Right.
I think that's where the contentness. He was already content initially. I feel like that he got as far as he did, and then he was playing the type of game. And I think you see that, oh, I can potentially win it. I have a great social game. I can win
Mhm.
against the people next to me. But then you see what the game now holds, and it feels like a total different game that you were prepared for. So for Will, who we have dubbed very inflexible game related. It's like the game has changed, and you now the end
Right.
game that you thought would come into play is no longer there, and now you have to deal with basically your worst nightmare of how the game's going to be played. So it's a lot, and I mean, I think it all came to a fruition where he was content how far he made. He loves the people in that house, and if this is where he goes, and he was okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, as a result of that, y- we talked about earlier how he told Ashley it was okay for her to campaign against him, but then he also wouldn't push for himself. We already talked about how he's not going to beg for votes. He wouldn't campaign against her. In fact, he was the opposite. Instead of meeting with people to try and get them to vote for him to stay, he met with people to say he wouldn't take it personally if they vote him out. He understands it's a game and that's okay. And it's like, no, you're doing this backwards.
He did not make it hard for people to turn on him, and that's the thing is he is so likable and so lovable. I think if there's any a player that could get past a week with just kind of guilting people
Mm-hmm.
and letting them know that, hey, we have such a strong connection. You know, I care so much about you. It would hurt me deeply if you vote me out. I think Will is one of the few players left in this house where that would actually mean a lot to some of these
Right.
players. He decided not to do that, and that's why, I agree with you. I feel like he was ready to leave the house because he wasn't fighting for it. And he just really did not want to go against Ashley at all in the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and we see it completely take him. So yeah, I mean the emotions, the whole feelings of it. You're in there for so long. You make these bonds with players, and for him, who's never really backstabbed anybody, it just came all to a fruition because now it's the timeline is exponential now. With Rachel being gone, you have less of a shield there, and somebody maybe you already thought he thought, okay, if I have to backstab Rachel, I might just do it because she is a Rachel. Well, now she's gone. Now I have to backstab my friends. I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, and you had mentioned, the Rachel factor earlier, and yeah, that's definitely one of it. He considered her a shield and an ally, someone who would, if he wouldn't fight for himself, she would fight for him. And she just wasn't there anymore. And that was just one more thing on top of that pile that we talked about.
Yeah, it's no. This rule has never made me so depressed for a player. But right now, this is we always talk about like, yeah, they can't control their emotions. They're
Right.
lashing out. We're talking about the will to live in the game
Yeah.
was gone for
Will
Will.
lost his will, is what,
Yeah, it's so depressing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it did impact his game
Right.
strongly.
All right. Well, since it's depressing you, we'll move on to the fifth rule, which says players need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. I suspect I might know the answer here, but how do you think Will did in this rule?
For many players, for few players, we say this, but he did not have to pretend.
Yeah.
His social game was impeccable. I think he truly was just himself in the house. And I mean, he made the house guests love him, and he made, very few times it's universal. House guests and America love a player. And I
Yeah.
truly think that, if Rachel wasn't on the season, I think he would have a great shot for AFP. He still might. He is so loved, and I think that was what took him so far. I mean, that's how he got into conversations in alliances where he really was not inputting much. That's how he was part of different groups when he wasn't winning competitions. And that's how when he was on the block, he wouldn't go home because of the players around him liked him so much. It really was until he kind of gave up on the game and stopped advocating for himself that he was sent home. It was never an issue of anybody saying, I don't like Will. I don't like what he said. I mean, even the most opposing players of the season had no issues with Will.
Right. Yeah, he was certainly the most well-liked person in the house, and like you said, outside the house. Most of it, again, like you said, wasn't even pretending. But he did pretend some because he had his strategy of just sitting there and listening when someone would talk. As he told Mike Bloom, you have certain people in the house who just love to talk. And if you love to talk, I'm going to let you talk. I've learned that in life. You have talkers who like to hear themselves speak, and you have those individuals who think they're the smartest in the room. So if you think you're the smartest in the room, I'm going to let you continue to think that you're the smartest in the room. So by doing that, it made people really enjoy him. He didn't challenge them on what they said. He didn't push back. He listened. So, compare that to Rachel, where Morgan would say something to Rachel and Rachel would be like, is that really the way it is? Is that really it? Because yesterday you said something different, even about mundane things. Will wasn't like that. He encouraged, he nodded along. Did he actually hear them? Probably not, but they didn't know that. It's funny because at one point, I think it was this week, Ashley came to him with something and said, okay, we're doing the plan we talked about yesterday. He's like, what plan? And she told him what the plan was. He goes, that's a terrible plan. Why would we do that? She's like, you agreed to it yesterday. He's like, no, I didn't. She's like, yes, you were nodding along. He's like, oh, I probably didn't hear you.
No, that's funny. I mean, that very much will, and it's a thing where I feel in the Big Brother house it's so exhausting, and every player there's no one you can trust really for sure. And if you think you can trust them, then either you or that person's playing the wrong game. And so Will was the type of player you could go, you felt like you were going home to, essentially, that it was comfort where you could talk to them and you wouldn't feel like, oh man, like the stresses of the house. He was that person for a lot of the players in the house, and he genuinely meant it. I mean, I think that's very impressive, and I think it speaks to, volumes of who the person he is. And I think that's even more so frustrating for us as viewers, and then us talking about in this episode where we're like, put an ounce of strategy of wanting to be strategic into Will. We see this man win this game.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we could go to the sixth rule. We know that Will was not voted out for being too unlikable, but was it the opposite? Was he voted out for being too likable, as he said after his eviction? Did he break this rule by being too much of a threat? And to that, I say it's interesting because when Will was nominated early in the game, it was done because he wasn't a threat at all, and therefore whoever sat next to him would go home. Ashley even said as much at the time, noting that it would be dumb if Will were to go home then because he wouldn't win anything going forward. And she was right. But as time went on and personalities mattered more and more, the tides shifted. If he were allowed to make it to the end, people would easily vote for him to win based on likability alone, especially against some of these other house guests.
Yeah, it's very interesting, like you said, because he is a very likable player, no doubt. But I do think, and we said in the beginning of the season, initially the first week or two, this house likes to fight. Like these players, all of them, they're just the way they were cast was just explosions in the box. So every single person kind of dislikes every single person to a certain degree, except Will. So it's Will is very likable and everyone is very unlikable to each other, And so I feel like because of that huge gap there, almost everyone felt worried that sitting next to Will, it doesn't matter what I say, what I do, they just like him more and they want to give him the money at the end of the day. Like, here's the thing is, yes, some players, jury members, are going to vote with strict strategy who did this,
Right.
but Will has done enough in those conversations, in those alliances. I think strategy alone, people would be like, you made it this far and we
Right.
really like you. I want to give you $750,000. I do not want to give this person that. I feel like their strategy was maybe just a little better than yours. It's not worth it.
Yeah. And, that brings up the question: was Will likely to make it to the end? No. Yeah, as we discussed in the fifth rule, the odds were stacked against him because of all the comps and the comps and then more comps. He was unlikely to win an important one and shake up the house in some way. Still, he could have been brought along if people focused on getting rid of others. meaning that by voting him out now, when the opportunity was there and he wasn't really fighting it, that was the best option for many of them. They didn't have to worry, oh, we'll have to deal with him later. Oh, he might make it to the end somehow. No, you don't have to worry about any of that. We can just cut this off right now.
Yeah, it's tough because trying to get to the end for him, I only see a pathway where he's kind of smudged between like a player like Rachel and Keanu, who
Right.
are huge threats to each other and they're worried about who can win. So both of them take Will. Then maybe at that point, Will can take out the win. But getting to that point would have been tough. Especially the way the competitions go end game where there
Yeah.
is a little less of variety. It's more sometimes endurance. And we know Will from his track record, that's probably not going to be a winning record.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially with the knee injury. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, the seventh rule says to trust almost nobody. I don't really think Will had issues with this rule because he mostly listened rather than talking. He didn't have the problem that others have this season of their secrets being told and retold all over the place or of people turning on them. That said, we can look back at something I mentioned in the first rule about how you should have allies that help you. Will trusted Ava since pretty much the beginning of the game, and she didn't purposely screw him over, but she did it accidentally due to her lack of strategy and her whatever will be attitude. Again, you need to trust people who will fight for you. And he had that in Rachel until he didn't.
Yeah. When you trust people, you give them a level of power because his game too was based on how other players would play around him and advocate for him. So he really is willfully giving his game in other people's hands, expecting that to work for him week in and week out. And it does in many ways until it doesn't. Because when your allies start, you have less and less, and people are playing their own game, that trust in them really gets even higher because their power level is so much stronger over your game. Their influence over your game is so much more. So Ava holding such a large pie of his game where he's like, okay, hopefully you will advocate for me. You will fight for me. When she doesn't, it falls apart. When Rachel goes out and is eliminated like that, it takes another out. Like your ability to win the game when it's based around other people really falters. And for him, that was an issue in this portion.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are at the jury now. So technically, we need to discuss the jury phase and Appendix A. But the thing is, there isn't really much to talk about here. We've already mentioned how people didn't want to face Will at the end. But beyond that, he wasn't doing anything specific in terms of helping his chances if he made it to the end when it comes to the jury. So I just, it's basically here because, I'm supposed to add it here according to my own self imposed rules, but I don't really have much to
You
say.
chose this.
Yeah. So
We will, yeah, I mean, I will be interested to see how he votes, whether he votes via alliance, going down, or if he decides somebody's game deserves to be better than, because of strategy, he wants to give him a vote. I think I'm interested in that, but also with Rachel being our first jury member, I think that sets the tone a lot. I just want, what I want right now is segments of Will and Rachel in the jury house. So that's
yes.
what I would love to see. And I'm pretty sure CBS, if they're smart, they're going to put that out in the next
Oh yeah.
episode.
They're going to put as much Rachel content out there as they can.
Very true.
So, all right. Well, it is about time to wrap things up. So, what are your final thoughts about Will?
Will, what a man. Kudos to him in a season where we have complained about a lot of players not just being maybe not the best gameplay, but maybe not the best people outside of it. Will has been refreshing. I mean, he has been loved by house guests inside, and he's captured America's heart. His gameplay was really interesting in the sense that it worked so well for him when there wasn't much gameplay. He really focused on the people around him, his relationships. He was a true savant in the social game, but he did not take the information he got from the social game to enact it in strategy. I wish he did so, because if he did so, I don't think we'd be having an episode about him at this point. He is my I wish you won, but you didn't. And for all the reasons we've talked about today, that is why he lost.
Yeah. Yeah, Will had an interesting path in the Big Brother house. He was chilling and then suddenly nominated twice. He survived those and went back to chilling again for a while. But while he was in alliances, he was mostly going with the flow rather than doing much to direct the flow. Of course, he thought he was in a good spot with the judges. As he said on the show, this was not supposed to happen. The judges controlled the game, and they mostly did until production blew that all to hell. Still, you have to remember in Big Brother that even when a majority seems to be in control, a minority can still win HOH and you find yourself in trouble. Or with the blockbuster this season, even your own HOH may have to nominate half the damn house. So you need to keep working. That just wasn't Will. As I've said, I'm not entirely sure what he expected to have to do in Big Brother, but strategizing, talking to other people, and fighting, or as he called it, begging for votes was definitely among those things. The funny thing is that even as much as he did not want to do those things, he was still a better player than at least half of these bozos. It is amazing what just listening, or at least pretending to listen, can do. But everything got to Will, and he just gave up. As I said, I can understand how it happened. But part of Big Brother is still dealing with the stresses and even being dealt a really crappy hand by production. I know it seemed very unlikely that he would make it to the end with the way things were lining up. But I can't be like Ava and just shrug and say, whatever happens, happens. It wouldn't be a very interesting podcast. Everything led to Will telling Ashley that it was fine to campaign against him. Ashley put in the work and got the job done. Will just let it happen. And that is why Will lost. So,
in a season of monologues where you have ripped into players, this might be one of your nicest monologues. And honestly, one of my favorites,
Okay.
Sweet,
Well,
simple, and very kind. And it honestly, truly encapsulated his full game.
Well, thank you. All right. Well, we will have predictions in a moment for the double eviction after a few other pieces of information. In addition, if you want our full thoughts, we are all over social media where we discuss Big Brother and other topics.
Yes, don't forget that we are both very active on a number of different social media platforms where we discuss Big Brother and other topics. On Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram, I'm at Ovi Kabir, and on TikTok, I'm at Basmati Boy. But David is truly all over the place, but you can track him down in a few different ways. You can find him on his Linktree at Linktree/David Bloomberg, or you can find him directly on Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg.
Yes, I encourage anyone at any of the other places to come over to Blue Sky for all of your Big Brother discussions and then continue it with your Survivor discussions. Also, for the videos, I have been posting 3 or 4, sometimes as many as 6 videos per day at TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, where I'm at David Bloomberg TV. It is, of course, a combination of thoughts from the episodes, a lot of live feed clips with my commentary. I mentioned that I did Australian Survivor, Australia versus the World, mini Y blank losts, and of course a Y blank won. And I also mentioned I am now over 50,000 subscribers on YouTube and almost 13,000 on TikTok. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed in either place. I am also doing a lot of podcasting this week. Of course, we talked earlier that Chantel Francis and I talked about why Rachel lost and her game overall yesterday. So if you haven't caught that yet, be sure you catch up with that. Plus, the Survivor 49 season is rapidly approaching. So Jessica Lewis and I will be doing our preview podcast Sunday. And on Saturday, I'll be back on the Tradar podcast talking about the Traders Ireland episode 6. So I'm having 4 days of podcasts. It is a busy week.
Whew, you are a busy man.
Yes. All right, prediction time. As always, these are spoiler free, so that means that we figured them out before the live feeds came back. But we do know there's a double eviction coming. Mm-hmm. We saw that Keanu told Lauren flat out he would be coming for her, and Vince and Morgan. So obviously, if Vince or Morgan win HOH, Keanu will be a target. In fact, I think he'll be a target for anyone but maybe Kelly. And even Kelly got upset with him recently. So he could literally be the definition of the house target. With 2 evictions, I just have to think he's going to be one of them. Maybe I'm fooling myself, but I have to. And then I would love to predict that Kelly will be the other one to go out.
Oh.
she does have Ava and Lauren on her side, but I'm not sure. I just don't know if other people would necessarily target her. But the thing is, she is the perfect nominee for people who want to keep playing the scaredy cat game, like Ava and Lauren. And I like the idea of her and Keanu going in the same night. So just because of that, I'm going to predict it.
Is it prediction or a dream? I'm not sure.
Both,
Um,
both.
it's funny. We're on opposite factors in here. I told you this beforehand. I believe that this week we're gonna see Keanu. He's gonna be safe. We're gonna see Kelly be safe this week too, because they're gonna win.
God,
They're gonna
stop.
win a competition. Who's gonna go out is Ashley and Morgan. I think
Oof.
Ashley this week, and I think Morgan probably in the double potentially right afterwards, because our comp beasts are going to win their way through it, and they're going to go for the next thing that they can potentially. And if it's not Vince, they're going to go for Morgan. So that's my prediction here. But you know what? I don't think we've had a season where you and I have both been predicting and wondering if our winner pick is going to go out week by week. It's impressive. I mean, I wish we put money on this, that how far our winner picks would go, because Keanu was yours, Ashley was mine, and they have defied all odds.
Yes.
I'm content how far they've gotten. All right.
Yeah.
I'm fine. But now, as we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP Patreon program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Rob has several patron-only podcasts for Big Brother, plus other perks like the Facebook group and Discord. You can support shows like ours and everything on the network by becoming a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron.
And make sure you're subscribed to all of the RHAP podcasts, either by going to WeKnowRealityTV.com, or for specifically Big Brother, you can look down here and see WeKnowBigBrother.com. You could select your podcast service of choice and get all the great content, like, especially if you want to move into Survivor as well and make sure you get Survivor Why Blank Loss, go to We Know Reality TV, because that covers everything. So, yeah, I encourage you to decide what you want and go there, and you'll get just tons of RHAP greatness.
And finally, we want to thank Scott St. Pierre and Jessica Sterling, the whole RHAP and reality TV wrap-ups behind the scenes team, for all the work they do for editing and posting and everything else. We really appreciate everything you do to get our voices from our microphones to your ears. And thank you for everyone who's been viewing, coming in here, commenting a week in and week out. I know we had to ride a strong and sad wave of these past week or so of not our favorite things happening, but we do appreciate y'all being dedicated and being telling us your thoughts. So let us know this week what you think of Will's game, what we said right, what we said wrong, or what David said right, obviously. And then let us know what your predictions are. Who do you think is going to kind of keep going forward? And this week might be for this double eviction.
Yes. And of course, thank you, Ovi, for a great episode. A great episode about a guy who seems to be really nice, and we're sad about heading out of the game, but it happens. Now the two of us will see everyone in a week. But I will be back, as I mentioned, with Jessica in a couple days, and you can find either of us on social media in the meantime. Until then, bye.
Bye.